Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We are back again with our DevSecOn India Meet, and we have two guests today, Vishwas Narayan and Komal Preet. They're going to be talking about different topics, but interesting ones. And today, while we cover these two topics, we would be bringing in light around DevSecOps and the different APIs security things that we have. So the first speaker would be Vishwas. Vishwas is a community advocate at opstree. He considers experimenting the key of technology. As a student, he was part of different communities. He's also been a speaker for community meetups, Event Computer Architecture Club, Google Crowdsource, the Pi, and AI, and many more things to go. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it over to Vishwas, and then we'll bring in Komal again. Thank you so much, everyone.
Sure. Thank you so
Vishwas,
much,
over
ma'am,
to you.
for sure. Thank you so much, ma'am, for that great intro. And people are being puzzled about like where does the technology fit inside, right? Because we are now form factoring the code into APIs, containers, you name it. It's still getting form factored into different things, Swagger, URL, this, that. I was like, wait, it's still going to be there in Kafka APIs. It's still going to be everywhere. And I took API hacking as one of my not career, but yeah, like I just took it as one of the hobbies to start with. But yeah, now I'm happy that I'm part of it. So you can start the share screen so we can get it started. So all right. So if you guys are connected with other people, so this is me, Vishwas Narayan. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. So I work in a company called as Opstree where we do a lot of CI/CD stuff and things like that. So do reach out to me if you have that. And let's go on with our demo so that we can get it started. Of course, let's start it. So most of the tools here is something that you are familiar with. If you are QA, if you are a tester, you will still be using it. And CRUD is an operation. It's not a tool, by the way. Of course, Swaggers, Fast API, API Curio is something that you always wanted to work with. So as a developer, we evolved as a tester, a QA, and of course, there's a new wave in the engineering field that's DevOps engineering. But guess what? We developed faster, failed quicker. Of course, we still rely on Django to release some sort of an security patch or something like that. But we implemented faster, but we literally forgot security. And guess what? We still trust each other to a greater extent. Like we still believe the QA is testing properly. We make sure that nothing as an authentication and authorization has gone wrong until we find out that an hacker is really getting ready to compromise it. So trust issues lies everywhere because to me connections, users, content, URL, files in the endpoint, there are new files which are just coming up, and there are a lot of devices which are just getting connected. We'll talk about devices as well, so don't worry about it. So this is how, if I say software is eating the world, a software engineer sees me like he knows that he is eating the world. And this is just a GIF which just says what's the kind of an attack and what's the frequency of an attack, where are the attackers coming up from, and it's just a representation. You can go to other maps as well that are still being represented. And this is how a CTO looks at me. He still knows that we are eating the world, but yeah, like he can't deny the fact we are eating the world. And of course, this is how a CISO looks at me and says that, you know what, you're just still saying the truth, but let's keep the truth to ourselves and let's architect solutions quicker and easier because it's still human in the loop at the end of the day. Thanks to developer advocates from Snide, they were just pretty awesome and giving me the motivation to do a slide like this. And yeah, like I still do the slides like this and I still love it. So I think it's one of the concepts that I grabbed from the Snike itself, the iceberg. So just go ahead, just see all of their videos. You will be amazed. So this is the beauty of the code that is just getting seen outside. There are SaaS tools that are coming up. There are amazing ways in which happy devs, happy bugs in the production. Yes, because we feel that velocity of pushing the code is going to be much more fascinating, and we forget to test it with the unit test and whatever it is, the black box test and whatever. But yeah, we think that it's going to be more challenging if we just go agile. We can evolve faster. Yeah, agile is a blessing. That's what I'm saying here. But 80 to 98% of the code is still open source. That means if you are still using Kubernetes, Thanos, something like Dapper, something like anything which is used for orchestrating the resources, managing the resources, it's still going to be open source. And 80% of the code found in the indirect dependencies, like there is an there is an company which has written an amazing code which is in React or something, but you still give it out to a third party vendor saying that, you know what, there is a huge challenge if we just go for building an app on iOS, app on Flutter, app on this and that. We don't want that complexity. So we give it to third parties, and guess what? They still grab you out with indirect dependencies. So millions of imports, yes, because every time when I just upgrade a server, there is a lot of updates which are happening with respect to libraries, dependencies. Agile is a curse to some extent to the development, because going agile, we forget that we are supposed to securitize the infrastructure before we deploy it in an agile fashion. So we evolved into robots of building code. And of course, today there's AutoML, no, low code, no code. But let's think about it. I go Web 3.0. Guess what? There's Web 3.0, metaverse, and things like that. People are coming. It's the infinity and the beyond. It's the sustainability. We are decentralized. Welcome to the world of Web 3. And every influencer wants you to follow it. Guess what? He also says Web 3 is infinity and beyond. You still can't do this. You still can't do this. You can't open a 20-second port on your EC2 instance or any VM that you have taken from a cloud and implement an Web3 application. That's impossible to do that. And of course, when I talk to a Web3 professional, there are companies which are really, really doing fascinating in terms of Web3. Guess what they do? They are still facing this knowledge gap between being an infrastructure engineer and being a Web3 developer. That means you can write an awesome code, but what if you don't architect it properly? So, what is dangerous, according to me, is everyone was in the loop. That means human in the loop. What is more dangerous is misconfigured cloud and APIs. Because to me, what I feel is there is an insensible amount of data that you can just think about. Like, you know what? Let me think of going inside any social media platform and just click a picture and just put it on. And if you are having some sort of a vulnerability in those kind of servers, if their infrastructure is compromised, it's going to be chaotic. That means somebody can use it. There are misinformations that can be spread. There are bots which are coming up. Trick bots are coming. Like, they can get inside your infrastructure without you realizing that, you know what, we are compromised somewhere. So you can go to this Val as one of the articles that I was referring to for the security misconfiguration. There is a lot of probability that you can just think this is so shiny, this is so good, but guess what? The danger still lies here. So an insider can really compromise all of these, and he can just give you an access to all these infrastructure. An app server can give you an access to the database. I can just show you a simple example of how, and I'm just opening this, but yeah, I will make sure that I just revoke the keys afterwards. Just go to Snike. Go to snike.io. You just go here. I don't have to even revoke the keys, but yeah, like if I revoke the keys, I have to log in again. So that's the whole problem. So don't worry about it. I'll just show you where it is. So just imagine I'm on this kind of an arena where people are coming in and I'm seeing all these vulnerabilities. That's good. But guess what? I just go here and I just click on some account settings and I just grab this key and I just put the same key in some GitHub repository. Guess what? Anybody can access it. But it's all in our practices and in our hands to keep our security more secure. So this is where Snike as one of the tools come in. So if you can see, one of the apps that I've been giving out here had a lot of vulnerabilities. So there are a lot of critical vulnerabilities which are getting realized right now in front of you. Like, you're just seeing it right in front of you. So there are low vulnerabilities and things like that. And Snakebot can fix it. By the way, you are authenticating it to fix it and authorizing it to fix it. So this is where that automation gets into that fixing and debugging process. So I can say, you know what, close the PR or else like merge pull request, it still goes and merges out there. So I think there's an action running. All right. So okay, this is a new repository, but yeah, we can go for an older repository and we can see how actions are shiny here. So it doesn't work like that. Like just go ahead and grab your knowledge in front of the documentation, through the documentation or else from anywhere. So you still can go scan the image, come back here and see what are the errors or what are the resources that you have compromised or anything. So container scanning is also one of the key instances that you can look back at. Because if you think what people are doing is still going to be a magical and a mystical step about getting in through this architecture, like they know for sure. An insider who has an access to all these things can obviously be social engineered and can be given out with respect to misconfigurations. Okay, I think there is a simple demo that I can do. Like it's not a big deal. Like you guys can still start learning. So it's still simple. Okay, I just do my zoom it so that you guys can see the magic of it. So this is a simple command that I'm running right now. So if you can see here, Docker scan is already being set. I need not have to do much. You have to just go to the Snike authentication token, just revoke it, just Snike login. You're actually getting it in. And I'm just scanning this repository here, Vishwas Narayan / Vishwas. And this is a public repository. You need not have to worry about it. So, all right. So have I done this? So yes. So if I just do it right now, so it takes some time. It's analyzing its own images that are just coming up. Like it's still APIs that are getting connected. That means it's still communicating. So I'll explain what is API if you are very new to the API. So just see the magic of this entire infrastructure that is getting laid in front of you. It's still cloud. It's still APIs which are communicating. There are, of course, Snake 1DB. It's one of the databases that you can just go back. Okay, I'm not saying anything about we are not vulnerable in the machine learning. Let me just show you one more thing. Snake. Because in here, if you even consider ML infrastructure, you can still DDoS it through one Snake vulnerability. So you can go for Snake DB, 1DB. So just go here and type in, a lot of things are already available here. So let's say pip. I named the package name as TensorFlow. There is a denial of service which can be done. So that doesn't mean that if you are doing ML, if it's open source, it's more secure. Guess what? They don't source it from one source itself. They just source it from hundreds of different places. And they give amazing things as well. So you can still see there is CV attached to it. There is top-notch information that is given to you. So what more do you want? So I think the best practice is to always go back into thinking that you are compromising your infrastructure somewhere down the line and leaving the fact that you're more secure with respect to adding a little bit more complexity. Probably that's the most dumbest thing that you can do. So we have to learn not to misconfigure cloud and an API. Why? I'll say you why, because I don't have sorry for that, I don't have an Azure credential today, but this is one of the sessions that I did in Azure Developer Community Bangalore. Oh, wait, I just use this. We'll see. So that means I'm in Jaipur community. So this is authentication and authorization. All right. So is there a key available? So I just wanted to show you the keys, how it can be revoked and things like that. So I'm still doing the same old authentication and authorization using the tokens which are given here. That means I'm just going to my function app, actually a function which I wrote, which I form factored it as an API, and I'm taking the key. You can see the key from here, and I'm putting it as an authorization, and I'm still going with the proxy, and I'm sending all these information. That means it's saying you're eligible to get inside this infrastructure. So that means you are not still secure if you have architected something right. If you have not really securitized your keys, if you don't have a rolling strategy for your credentials, probably rotating and the rolling strategy for your credentials, probably you're going to miss. This is where something like policy as code and governance as a code comes into the picture. It makes a lot of impact, by the way. So what's an API? Sorry for quoting in Wikipedia here, but it can change, but keep this as one of the definitions. So API stands for Application Programming Interface. Whatever I saw, I just showed you, and whatever I am seeing today in my phone, in my laptop, is still APIs, which are form factored in a different ways. Like one funny fact is like you don't need to have a top to down Java stack today. You can have a Go developer, Python developer, and anybody, and they can interface any logic into a form factor of an API, and they can run it. So this is where fundamentally everything comes into the picture. So it's a simple analogy. You can think of it as a socket for communicating with different sources. Like my laptop is connected to one server, and I'm now charging my phone as well. So it's just a socket. So to me, and laptop becomes an API which can give me a power source, and to my laptop, my power source is the source of the power. So this is where fundamentally you can analyze and summarize everything. So today's blessing is multiple language and abstraction as an API is still occurs. That's what I was saying about, because you don't know where is an RCE vulnerability coming into the picture. Like, let me just show you what an RCE snipe. It was in some package. RC snipe. I forgot. Okay. Twitter tools or something. I forgot. Okay, let's say blog. If you just Spring Force shell. Okay, it's still RC. Okay, this is one of that articles. I think Vandana ma'am has a video on it. I don't know about it, but yeah, like just go ahead and see what is happening here. I think Vandana ma'am has a video on it, so just go ahead and watch it as well. She's explained it well. So this is where Snike is making a good impact and giving you that right insight for the security word, because fundamentally you can download, you could have used that package and you could have written it. Probably there is an RC vulnerability inside your entire system, so that can happen. So let's learn what are some APIs. Let's talk about it. Let's worship this, because in a meanwhile it's not just Postman, it's also about like an opscotch tool that I'll be showing, because I don't want to make it more mainstream with respect to API hacking, so I just do that. So just go ahead and look at what is happening in all these links. The link will be shared in the comment section of this video, so go ahead and watch this as well. So never treat an API like a web server, because an API is never a web server at the end of the day. So the most common API hacks that I'll be actually portraying, because I'm not supposed to show a real-time demo, so I'll be just taking a public demo which is already there. We'll just be using it so that you are understanding what is happening. So an IDOR and a BOLA is something there. BOLA is broken object level authorization, so I'll be focusing on that. IDOR, you can just go and learn it, but just go fetch some more information from other sources. You will be sorted. So what's a BOLA or an IDOR at the end of the day? It's still the same. Okay, let me just give you what an IDOR is, because I will not be giving a demo here. So IDOR is insecure direct object reference. That means like me as an hacker, insecure direct object reference is what you can do even in BOLA as well. So you're referring the object level authorization and authentication. So let me just say you what's happening here. So in the course of time, you're just taking it, you're just thinking, I'm just having an idea of 1001, and they're saying of course, and there is 3001 which is also saying of course. That means that you're fundamentally hitting on the servers, you're fundamentally hitting on the infrastructure that is getting behind your entire portfolio. That means you have an 80 port open and a 443 HTTP, HTTPS, TCP, IP ports open, whatever it is, you're not still open at 22nd port, but still the business logic is written in such a way that somebody with this ID can come and hit on your server. So that means you're still vulnerable. So the response is okay, means you are still compromising your business logic. So this is something that actually fears me out, because hackers now understand an API slang, because fundamentally there were less amount of programmers before, but more amount of hackers back then. But it's changing. So don't worry about it. So lots of scope. to talk about best practices. So for your developers, you want to make the lives easier, but for a hacker, he knows how you make your lives easier. So think about strategizing different ways. Probably making sure the credential sits in some sort of an vault. That makes a lot of sense. So this is not me. This is not me at all. This is not my phone. I don't use Samsung, which is like an older version, but yeah, like this is Samsung, a newer version. So if you want, you can just hit on any Android phones. Look at all these reboot options which are still available. You still see the same old way on your hardened clusters, which is having some Kubernetes. I don't know why, because it's still Kubernetes at the end of the day that we deal with. And back then, when I was a Flutter developer, this is what I used to do. I used to unlock all these USB debugging used to never be there. But these are vulnerabilities which could have hit me very badly. I'll say you how all these things used to help me. Because fundamentally, when I started dumping in the code, hot reload used to come and things like that. Hot reload is something like you don't have to rebuild the code again. You just have to just the configuration just gets changed on your entire front end and the back end looks. So that's how it is. So all these would have had led me to broken object level authorization. That means somebody who would have had known what would have been IMEI numbers or anything like that would have had internally communicated with the APIs which are running on my servers. So that's how magical and mystical these steps are. So not mine, but just a sample. So don't worry about it. So API breaches, I'll just be giving a little bit of a demo on some practices. You can just think about it. These companies were also breached out because of an Ebola vulnerability. That means a client API was manually specified with an object ID. Anything can be an object ID here, and anything can be hit. So that's how these companies were getting hacked. Simple API hack, by the way. I'm just giving you a simple definition. Though I've written everything as Facebook, Uber, Verizon, T-Mobile that I wanted to download, hack Bola, but whatever happens with respect to the requests are just coming here. That means your computer is dumb enough to just get the right information. That's it. It's not taking care of what's happening here. That means it just knew that okay, T-Mobile hacked Bola and it just gave me that. But every other company was also given right. So this is where fundamentally you get inside that infrastructure and you start analyzing what is that IP response happening. Sorry for that. So some Postman hacks or else some any API testing hacks that you can really go ahead with. So you can go for a get, that is a get method, post method, delete method, whatever it is. You can still go ahead and hunt down an API with respect to all these DevOps practices that we have. That means a developer can be fetched. A developer's habit can be fetched. This is where you're adding the marks and you're adding the marks to that ID, and there you go. You just realize that this is the business logic and I can change the way it's behaving. So simple as that. You have opened a port numbers 443 and there's an HTTP or TCP/IP traffic. And guess what? Your APIs are still running on a business logic which doesn't have an authentication and authorization rigged up properly. I got inside your infrastructure, changed the IDs. So at the end of the day, DevOps is predictable. How to fix it? Test API, have OWASP top 10. Just keep looking back at what OWASP top 10 is just focusing towards in the world of security, hacking or anything. Just get it. SAST and DAST tools. Yes, you need SAST and DAST tools to realize what is happening. You can use IaaS tools as well, but DAST tools are going to give you much more information regarding your entire infrastructure. So you need not have to worry about it. So hack your own APIs. Authorization has to be done properly. Stop relying on jailbroken device detection because fundamentally it's almost going to end your API security practices because you are fundamentally targeting your device level securities and your detection of the ports which are open and things like that, but you don't specifically see how business logic is vulnerable. So let's go on with some demos. So before going, just go ahead, If you want to try it live, it's an open source thing, so you just have to just go out there live it, or just download it. It's still available on your localized system, so just go ahead, log in. You can still log in, and yeah, I've already created one, and you can still preview the documentation. So yeah, it's not a big deal here. So this is all available publicly, so you can still go ahead and do that. So studia.api.curio. So this is something that I did just like 4 hours before. Just wanted to see what's happening here, and this is one of the APIs that I've written. So Vishwas demo. So I used an internally available pet data store, and guess what? I can still go ahead, get my own APIs, design it, get the source out of it. That means you are not designing an entire infrastructure of APIs, you're just putting in the logics and you're now designing it. So what happens when there is an error? What happens when there is a new pet added? There is a key. What is the required string? Read only, write only. You can still configure it here. So if you want to see what was written in that documentation, very simple as that, you can still get the magic of it. So this is how the swagger.io really looks like in your infrastructure. So you can still document anything, you can still go ahead with this. This is one of the best practices, but make sure that you put it under some sort of an authorization and authentication, because if you are allowing this in the public, probably somebody can get into, even if they doesn't know your blue green deploys URL or else anything which is still masked with respect to any IPs or something. Probably if somebody gets to know, okay, there is some show and scan which I can do. Like I can just show you right now. Like you can now enter somebody's Jenkins server. Like this can happen. This is like available on the world. Like okay, so okay, so let's get it sorted. I think that was actually working. I don't know what's happening, but yeah, TK. So this is somebody's server. Somebody has opened it. Somebody has left it out there. So anybody can enter. So yeah, like you can enter. So that's not a problem. So just make sure. I think this is all just test servers which they are just getting in. It's probably some Jenkins test or something. So don't worry about it. There's nothing magical and mystical here. So you can see the way in which they are documenting it, but make sure that somebody gets in with a lot of authentication and authorization. Like, okay, now stack trace, detect an API. Okay, fine. Don't worry about it. I still have my documentation which is here. So that's perfect. That's actually where authentication and authorization is kept in mind. And you are sorted, by the way. So this is where unexpected errors, everything can be architected. So this is such a simple tool. I'm just going here. I'm just sending an simple testable, and it's available publicly for you. So you can just go ahead and get it. So you can just go here and get these things. But just look at the magic. I just have this thing, an HTTPS file, everything comes up. That's good. Let me just type get data. Guess what? It doesn't work. Let me type US. If I'm not authorized to test it, guess what? It should not give me a status 200. But if I'm authorized to test it, it should give me a test of authorized 200. Sorry for that. So I just missed it. So you can see that it's giving me a test of US. And let's say I want to just find somebody's data which is in UK and some data which is in UK. I can just go ahead and I can grab it. Just see the magic of it. Everything is there in front of you. You need not have to worry about it. You need not have to cause any pain. And there is no authentication and authorization required. That means this is where hackers, not just like me, anybody can get in. I'm not a hacker. I'm just a pen testing guy. But yeah, like I'm not an hacker, by the way. I've not gone into that kind of an learning, so don't worry about it. So I'm authorized to use it and I'm authenticated to get the information. This is just a test server that we are just running, so don't worry about it. So your naming also matters, because you are not supposed to give your blue green URLs to anybody, right? I just wrote something like Swag Labs, and guess what? There's no Swag Labs coming up. This is all source demo, and this is one of the publicly available URLs where you can go and do a lot of testing. You can still get in and do a lot of web testing and things like that. If you want to learn, go ahead with it. Nobody wants to make sure that you don't learn it or things like that. So think about it. So that's how it is. That's how you need not have to worry about it. You just get in, you have a lot of things. And of course, there are tools which are already available for you. So if you just see, okay, there are many other boxes which are already available, and cert.sh is giving me access to those websites which are already coming up with respect to what do you call the SSL certificates attached to it and things like that. So think about all these things. These are some of the practices which the world requires in order to be more cautious about the way which we are going to architect. And lastly, just a simple step. If you have a product which is using APIs and tokens and authorization and authentications, make sure that you put it in a MetaMask or some sort of a vault where you don't compromise your secrets at any cost. And make sure that you have written a policy in the security as a code in order to give that end-to-end traceability for your entire system. So happy to use folks. Happy to see you folks from DevSecOn. So this is some testing that we wanted to do with respect to Microsoft, and this is publicly available. And I'm not doing anything which is not publicly available, right? I can still go and play it.
Happy to see you folks from
I
DevSec
hope
in
you guys
India.
are seeing me. But if you can't hear it, don't worry about it. I'm happy to see you folks from DevSecOn India. So this is how we learn where we have to fit in the security practices and the things like that. And next thing, this is the Lab Growers website. So go ahead with it. Hopscotch is one of the tools that I demoed in front of you folks. It's still the Postman and things like that. I wanted to do a demo on a Bluetooth hack, but yeah, like I was not able to do that. HC05 can be hacked at any given point, but there's a lot of other things that can be done with respect to a Bluetooth device. So if you want to really get an information about what's happening back in your entire Bluetooth device, if you want to learn Bluetooth hacking, just go ahead with it. It's still VIN number, device numbers. It's still going to give you the same old API practices that are coming up here as well. And by the way, this is also an API. Don't worry about it. So it's form factored as an API and given to you. So one of the maintainers have written a video for that. I've written a lot of documentation and they have written they've given a video for that. So just go here. And if you really want to learn more, so there's an tool called as Kite which is still magical and mystical in the world of API hacking. Just go grab these tools. These tools are still used in supply chain security. So do drop in that. And finally, that's the end of the demo from my side. Do hit me up on LinkedIn as well as, okay, Sham, hi, do you teach or train DevSecOps? I have to look at it. So connect with me on LinkedIn. It will be great to talk with you folks and learn more. And if you want to learn car hacking, there's a free book on car hacking. Free book. Just go ahead, grab that book. You're good to go anywhere. So it's still APIs at the end of the day. If you still want to learn more, do reach out to me. I'll just help you in your learning process. And thank you so much for Vandana ma'am for giving this chance. I was able to learn a lot and I was able to actually demo something which is publicly. Thank you so much for this opportunity, DevSecOn India. You're muted. Your voice is actually a little low. You're muted.
Okay, thank you so much, Vishwas, for giving the session. It was wonderful. I don't see any questions right now, but if there
Sure,
would
ma'am,
be any
not a problem.
questions, if you can share your Twitter handle, we would love to for people to connect with you, or LinkedIn, where people can actually reach out to you.
Sure, ma'am. That would be the Vishwas Narayan 5 is my Twitter handle. You guys can go just reach out to me. That's where I come in. So I'm not that active on Twitter, so don't hit me there. But LinkedIn anytime, anywhere. Don't worry about it. So thank
Great.
you so much, folks. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you so much, Vishwas. And people, you can reach out to him. He keeps sharing a lot of information. So it'll be really amazing to see you guys connected. And now I would let uh, Komal join us. And thanks,
Sure.
Vishwas.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Hi, Komal. You're on mute.
Hi, Vandana. Yeah, got it. Thanks. Hey there.
Great. Yeah, hey. So everyone, Komal is going to be talking about DevSecOps and culture aspects today. I will let her talk more about that, but a little bit about her. She's currently actually leading the security engineering. And interesting bit is that she has over a decade of experience in product security and has been fortunate enough to work with diverse product engineering teams, including IoT applications and cloud. In her current role at Jumio, she's working on growing DevSecOps and security engineering function. And I'll just give it over to her to take the conversation further and share the information. Over to you, Komal.
Thanks a lot, Vandana. Is it okay if I share my slides?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Thank you. All right. So, hey everyone, I really wanted to. I'm first of all, thanks a lot, DevSecOn, for giving the opportunity to me to speak on this topic. I think this is a very relevant topic for all the growing organizations, and I've myself come across this as one of the key topics that we as InfoSec teams end up dealing with on a day-to-day basis within our organizations. So, just to start the conversation. I guess in my current role at Jumio as well, I'm leading the security engineering team, and one of the key focuses of my current role is also on growing DevSecOps and building the culture across teams, not just InfoSec, across engineering. And I guess it really comes down to how the two aspects of business really come together and collaborate. So. Without much delay, I would really want to get started with it. And I guess the topic is kind of tricky because what I really want to talk about is resolving the ownership battle between engineering and infosec. And before we jump into it, I would really want to go back to the basics, understand why we are having this conversation here in the first place. And I understand the folks who are probably seeing this video, they are already working on DevSecOps in some way in their organization, either for designing it, implementing it, or spreading the word across different teams even. And but why it's important for us to go back to basics and talk about where it all began, because it reiterates the point why it's important as well. So I guess sometime back when we started talking about DevOps and really ensuring that we are working in a more efficient way, distributing responsibilities across an organization as a whole, and not keeping these responsibilities focused on teams to make sure everyone works in a more efficient way. I guess we started figuring out that security is becoming bottleneck. We were not really figuring out how security can be run in parallel with all the other activities which are happening around development, testing, or operations. And we started hearing more and more about how security should be embedded into the DevOps pipelines, how we need more automation in security to make sure that we are really able to run alongside the development and the testing teams while they are building the product. And terms like shift left came into the picture, and eventually, I guess, the community in general decided to agree that yes, we need to make DevOps secure, and probably terms like DevSecOps came into the picture. So the point that I'm trying to reiterate here is that the origin of DevSecOps started because security did not want to be a bottleneck. We wanted to stay ahead. We wanted to run in parallel with the development and the testing teams and the operations at the same time. And that's the whole objective of DevSecOps, to make sure we do not end up doing things in the end. Right. And having said this, I would now want to walk you through a very simplified journey. I would say an almost simplified journey, because DevSecOps cannot always be that simple. But I just really wanted to give an example here on how a growing organization may have, defined their approach on building DevSecOps across their organization. So let's start with the overall approach and how step by step we will probably want to implement DevSecOps at an organization. So remember the keywords: we wanted to automate, we wanted to make sure we shift everything left. So we decided, why not at the coding stage we introduce something like a SaaS tool which will really help us identify vulnerabilities as soon as they get introduced to the system. As soon as the developers are writing the code, we should be able to flag the issues, and we should be able to fix that. And because we are a very diligent, focused infosec team, we really went out there, did our market research, figured out what is the best tool available in the market, made sure that it gets integrated as part of our pipeline, and made it our quarterly goals to really make sure that SAST is integrated as part of our pipeline in a neat way, right? And to be honest, there are so many tools right now which can do this for us. There's no shortage of tools, and many of these tools are now giving us the ability to really configure it at a level where it's extremely customized for you as well. You can define the rule sets, get a lot more visibility into your code. So we decided to do that, and we figured, yes, that is the right first step for us to make, probably. Then we figured, what about the open source vulnerabilities? We step into our journey to achieve the next milestone for us, that is SCA. And there are, again, so many nice tools available in the market. You have Sneak, you have Dependabot, you have Mend, and all of these tools. And I guess there are many more. And even if you off the shelf product doesn't really work for you, OWASP has such a nice tool for doing the same for you, right? So again, we did our homework, we went there, figured out the best tool, got it integrated in the next quarter. And we started building our journey on DevOps integration for there. We started figuring out, yes, maybe IAC scanning is the next step we want to take. We figured we are using containers, we might as well have container scanning happening as part of the pipeline. We started jumping to the testing phase, wanted to add coverage there, so we integrated DAST analysis. And then we went to the deployment stage. Maybe AMI scanning needs to be done, vulnerability scanning needs to happen on as part of the pipeline. And of course, we need to monitor everything, so continuous monitoring, incident response, and looks like we have a good enough plan for DevSecOps. But there's a very significant element that we may be missing here, right? Remember when we talked about automation and shifting left? There's a significant element of consumption of the output of all the steps that we have taken here. There really need to be humans who will be consuming the output of all the tools that you have integrated, and all the steps that we have integrated over here, they really need to make sense from the perspective that the organization can actually act on it, right? So at times I've seen this, that infosec teams are so focused on covering every element of DevSecOps that they tend to ignore the fact that there needs to be a plan for owning the mitigation. There needs to be a plan for adoption of these tools among everyone in engineering. And it's not just the infosec teams that really need to understand how these tools are adding value to you in the long term. And eventually, if we talk about automation, you cannot have true automation unless your humans are also on the same page as your tools. You really need to make sure that people understand the value of these tools, they understand why we are doing it, they understand the end objective behind it, and you collaborate, you work on the same problem statements as them to fixing it in the long term, and not just trying to achieve milestones in the short term. So I guess the point that I was trying to make here was to make sure that we do not get so lost in automating the tool aspect of it that we forget about the people aspect of it. And if we really dig deeper into the problem statement here, of course, we started with security automation, but we did not plan it through, right? We were trying to fill the gaps in the DevOps pipeline from a coverage perspective, but I guess we failed to understand the bigger picture here. Now, breaking it down into pieces, imagine having integrated one more tool into the pipeline without really understanding the processes, and imagine the kind of outcome that it will throw back at you, right? We'll be sitting on a whole lot of vulnerabilities, probably hundreds, probably thousands, all added to the backlog. Now, if we are dealing with that backlog all of a sudden without a plan, without people knowing what to do with it, I guess we eventually did fail to automate security eventually, right? Because having vulnerabilities and of course there would be a lot of false positives that we will be working with here, because we fail to understand how the engineering teams are really working, what are the problem statements that they are working with, what are the kind of processes they are following, what are the frameworks, what are the how the source code really, how does it flow within your organization. Without understanding that, just integrating more and more tools and not trying to figure out whether or not it's actually working for us, not doing that check-in with the teams on a regular basis, that will eventually lead to more false positives. Because a tool is as good as as good as one more addition to your tool set if you're not able to actually act on the outcome of that tool. So the lack of customization and the lack of tool based engineering processes and technologies really led us to a situation where we are now dealing with a lot of false positives, leading to a bigger backlog. And that again leads us to lack of defined processes that might work for us, and again leading back to the ownership crisis. And that's where the whole crux of the equation comes into the picture, because who owns it, who owns this backlog, and who owns the day-to-day operations and understanding of the tool, and who makes sure that the tools are actually adopted or not. And that's where I've seen majority of the conflict between the engineering and infosec teams happen across organizations. So I guess I've been working in this space for more than 10 years now, and one thing that I've learned is no matter what business you are leading, you really need to collaborate with people to be able to drive it. Security is no different, right? So in this case as well, because of lack of visibility across how engineering wants it to happen, or engineering the kind of problem statements that engineering really needs to be solving, just trying to fill in the gaps will not give you security automation at the end of the day. It will eventually lead to more conflict, because again we never sat down with engineering to build a strong relationship to really understand the problem statements, and that's where security is back to becoming a bottleneck. So that really beats the whole purpose of implementing DevSecOps in the first place. We are again back to square one, wherein we are trying to automate security and not just becoming redundant in the whole process. So now that we understand, probably this is a problem that we want to be dealing with, right? So how do we exactly work on resolving it? One of the first things that I have understood in my roles over the years is you need problem statements which make sense, and those problem statements cannot be infosec problem statements. Those statements have to be defined alongside engineering, because if you really think about it, DevSecOps is all about building the culture within an organization now. And you cannot build culture across any organization if you do not align on the problem statements that you need to be working with. As we discussed earlier, there are so many problems to solve in your DevOps pipeline. There is so much coverage to add, but you really need to know what should take priority over what. And you really need to know how something needs to be done in order to actually make sense for the larger audience. And that's where ensuring that you have the right problem statements and the right priorities to be solving those problem statements comes into the picture. It's extremely important that you collaborate with the engineering teams right from the beginning of your journey, and not assuming it as assume that as an afterthought, that once the integration is done, of course in some months everyone will start using it. It will not work that way, and it will lead to a lot of confusion later. Another approach that of course we have tried a lot is doing a lot of POCs. And POCs are excellent for two reasons. One, they bring the engineering and the infosec teams together before a long term commitment is done for making permanent changes to your way of working, right? And it also kind of breaks the ice on solving some of the topics that you really need to be solving. And it also helps you learn what actually works for you. What may look very good on paper may not actually be relevant for you. So there are no two pipelines which are identical. There are no two organizations which function in the exact same way. So there is no reason why the DevSecOps approach, which may have worked for one organization, will work in the exact same manner for another organization. It has to be customized. And I guess POCs are an excellent way to start doing that and really collaborating with engineering teams before you make a long-term commitment to change things for good. And of course customization. So you really need a tailor-made approach. As I mentioned, everything is working differently for different organizations. The way your code is running, the way your frameworks are being used, the way your base images are being updated, or your code repositories are being updated, everything is different for everyone. And we really need to understand how that customization element has to come into the picture for us to actually leverage DevSecOps. And you won't be able to customize it unless you understand the engineering side of the story, right? How can you customize something to work for them if you don't understand them in the first place? So the customization element can only come into the picture once you have really understood how engineering is working and how they are doing things. And you really need to align your approach to match the same. Another important aspect is, of course, communication, explaining your objectives to the engineering teams. I've seen this happen many a times, that people fail to communicate what they are trying to achieve at the end of a security initiative. They end to they aim to achieve a more mature DevSecOps pipeline. What value add will a SaaS tool, like whatever SaaS tool that you're recommending to them, what is the value add that it will actually bring to the table, and what is the value add that you will get from integrating another tool like SE or IAC scanning, any of these aspects, right? So you really need to be communicating that and not assuming that it's a obvious problem statement. It may not be that obvious for everyone. It may be very obvious for you, and at the same time you really need to understand the engineering's perspective on this as well. You really need to understand what their long term goals are. They are under a lot of pressure. They are in a very competitive environment. Of course, they have to ship new features left, right, and center. It's a very competitive market out there. So, of course, anything that you change has a significant impact on their way of working. You really need to capture that in communications early on in the process and not wait till the last moment to get that done. And yeah, of course, the last point on this would be listen and learn. You really need to get a lot of feedback from engineering and act on that feedback. You really need to be very good at listening, and that is something that I would really recommend all the infosec teams to be doing, because you need to understand how they operate, how the engineering is working, what they actually need, and accommodate that feedback in your long term roadmap. And I guess one thing where many of us go wrong is we try to accomplish DevSecOps as one milestone, and that's not it. It's not a milestone for infosec. It should never be a milestone for infosec. It's a journey for the whole organization, and we have to make it together. So if you think because someone's not able to adopt your tool efficiently or faster enough, that cannot be the reason for you to complain about it. You really needed to accommodate that in your roadmap. How long will it take for a tool to get adopted? And I guess the whole story here can be summarized in just two words: you really need to start talking more. I mean, we are dealing with people at the end of the day. DevSecOps is no different, and security initiatives are no different. So you really need to be going out there and talking about it a lot more. I'll also take some time to explain one approach that I've seen being followed in my current role. So we are trying to collaborate with engineering teams at a lot deeper level. We are really trying to make it work for them. And when we say shift left, we don't just mean it in terms of the tool sets, right? Shift left has to happen on people perspective as well. You really need security advocates, security engineers being there at the ground level, working day to day with your scrum teams, participating in their day to day events, participating in their planning events, retrospective events, all of that. They really need to be there to speak on behalf of your security initiatives or mitigations to be done, helping them understand the issues, helping them understand the tools, understand the value add that a tool is bringing, and really hand holding them throughout the adoption process whenever you have made a change. And of course, it's a two-way street. So you really gather feedback from engineering also through the same channel. Once you start participating more in day-to-day activities of engineering, you also start to understand what are the real challenges that they are struggling with. What is it that we can do to help them understand our objectives in a much better way? And that's where better participation from both ends comes into the picture. That cannot happen unless you have engineers, security engineers, working very closely with developers and QA teams. So you cannot really drive that change unless you are committed to doing it at that level. You also need to open up a lot of channels for collaboration that serves again in a way that you're trying to gather feedback from all the sources that you have, trying to brainstorm on topics, come up with problem statements and long term strategies, initiatives as part of those discussions. Really gather your queries and really see whether or not what you are trying to do here is making an impact in a positive direction or not. And I think this becomes one of the best ways to really gather feedback on your own initiatives as well, and also spread the message around what you really want to do. Security awareness, if you have people working at ground level closely with the scrum teams, of course there's no reason why you cannot leverage the same channel for spreading awareness on the topics that you are trying to drive, and spreading awareness on problems that you think all of us should be working together as a team, right? So that should also be responsibilities of the security teams that are working on the ground. And in the end, you need security leaders who are able to act on feedback, who can go back and change things if they really need to for the betterment of the whole organization, and who can really accommodate that feedback as part of your DevSecOps strategy as an organization. So this is just one approach that I have seen happen, and it works because we are really able to connect with engineering in a way that a true infosec team working as part of DevSecOps culture should be able to do, and that is really helping us do it. Are there challenges to it? Of course, there are significant challenges to it, because Jumio is in the business of establishing trust for other organizations, and security is one of the key functions that we have here. And having said that, it becomes really important for us to make sure that if we really want to stick with this approach, we need very promising security engineers who can do it at the ground level as well, right? So it's not easy to do it. It's probably going to take a lot of effort for you to build a growing team which can actually do this for you. And you need people who can collaborate, own initiatives, drive the conversations with engineering, and that's not going to be easy. But I guess when you are trying to make change across the whole organization, you cannot expect it to be very easy in any way. So yeah, that's pretty much about what I really wanted to touch upon in today's topic. And I really hope that this opens up some conversations around this topic, because I know for a growing organization, growing DevSecOps can be a very different story, and it can be a very challenging one, and at the same time it will be a very rewarding one as well. And I really hope that this little bit of this little bit of experience that I've shared here may help someone out there to rethink their approach on DevSecOps and really do something about it. So if this was helpful for you, I mean, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can see my profile here, and I'll be handing over back to you, Vandana.
Thank you so much, Komal Preet. It was a wonderful session and especially great insights. I totally loved it. And I don't see any questions at the moment in the chat box. But what I can say is that if you can share your LinkedIn profile or Twitter, probably people can come back to you, because a lot of times what happens is that people just come back to you after the session is done. I can see a lot of people are watching. So nobody has asked question, but it'll be great if you can share your details and people can come back to you.
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn here, and I hope you're able to see my LinkedIn profile.
I'm just sharing. Yep, I have shared it. Yep. So thank you so much, Komal, for joining me today. It was wonderful to have you.
Thanks, Vandana. And thanks for the opportunity to speaking on this topic. This is something that's very close to heart, I must say, in my day-to-day work. And I really liked talking about this as well. Hope it helps someone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We would come back next month again with our next set of speakers. Stay tuned for that. Thank you.